So I do want to keep this intro kind of short, as Runway itself is a rather short video, but I do of course want to do our pre-video chat, which if anybody has a name for that isn't buddy time, I would be more than happy to consider the idea. That said, I do want to kind of talk a bit more personally, as streaming and recording is kind of a dream of mine. And some of you may know that I was streaming on Twitch for a while, and even fewer of you may know that I kind of got put through the ringer after my last stream, which I believe was the Dynamo run, and I do want to revisit that, but my old phone is broke presently, and it is going to cost a small fortune in order to fix the screen on, and hopefully that's the only issue. But as of right now, I'm unable to recover that save data, and while I wasn't far into it and so I could just restart the run, I don't feel like it's in the spirit of the challenge. Long story short though, I don't have the resources that I would like to have. As I mentioned in the description of one of the previous videos, I really could use an editor, among other things, as I've kind of been pushing myself to do these last couple videos, and I wish I had more time to get them out to you. And so I'm currently in a debate over whether to spend weeks to months on perfecting every detail of the video, or getting it to a point at which I'm at least somewhat satisfied with and putting that out, which I have been doing. That said, I know my audio has been rather rough, and while there are tools to clean up my audio, I don't have enough experience in those tools to understand how to properly do all that. And while there are paid tools that will do all that for me, I honestly cannot afford to set those resources aside for that at the moment. And I guess that's where you guys come in, because I really do enjoy making this content for you, and it would be something I would love to do long term or even full time, but I kind of need help getting there. And even though I have a small community right now, I would love to see it grow, and I would love to be able to reach a point where I can get the resources I need to be able to provide quality content for you. With that said though, let's jump right into the video. So, as promised, I wanted to return to the first level of the game, just to see what we could uncover in the visual editor. And I apologize now for the kind of janky controls, as it's not the most convenient to navigate. Exploring around here, I did notice that quite a few of the structures within the level are actually modeled into the level itself, which I kind of find somewhat interesting. There's also this antenna here, which seems to be clipping inside of the building. I would have to go back and look and see if that's how it appears in-game too. I do want to talk about the gate as well. I had mentioned before about potentially clipping through it, although that's apparently not necessary, as about 6 months ago, somebody had actually managed to get the guards to open the gate for them, much in the same way that speedrunners would do Aztec, and as I did in my Slappers Only run. That said, I do suspect a clip might still be possible, but no longer necessary. I did also humor myself and take a look at these metal crates to see what caused them to be destructible, and it appears to simply be a unclick toggle for invincibility for the object. Why exclusively this level, I am not sure, but it was something to note. As well, I did want to dive down to the bottom of the dam and see if the grate down here was classified as an object, which is also part of the level geometry. In fact, as I kind of fly around here, it's quite amazing how many of these objects are static parts of the level and not classified as objects. There are also these red squares everywhere, which I find very interesting. I will probably have to dig more into them, but they seem to separate the rooms. I think the most interesting discovery for me, though, is these lights up here on the ceiling, as they are not objects, which is fascinating since if you shoot them, they can be destroyed. And I am very fascinated as to how they manage that. That said, I do want to show off above the rooms in between floors, as it's actually quite fascinating to fly through. And here we have another one of those red cubes, which I don't linger on very long, as I wanted to confirm a long-running childhood theory that the room with the computers is directly under where you would plant the modem. And of course, with this much control over the camera and the environment, I also wanted to go check out the infamous island, which, from what I could tell from the pads here, as well as the grouping of pads on the tower itself, it seems very likely there may have been 3 guards stationed on this island that you would have had to dispatch along with the machine gun. Interestingly, there is yet another one of these red cubes, which I wish I knew what they were for. I will showcase a few more of these neat little findings as we transition into the main part of the video. So here we are on Runway, and aside from having some minor technical difficulties with the controls and ending up upside down, there isn't really a whole lot to talk about here, but that's not to say that there's nothing. I do immediately want to get a close-up of the key, which I can't tell if it has a texture or not. It just seems to be a black void, but mildly interesting nonetheless. Of course, I do want to visit the tank, which in the overview is not listed. However, there is 2 copies of the missiles, which I can only assume one of those is supposed to be the tank and mislabeled. However, despite my best attempts, I don't see a correlation between the 2 sets of numbers. There are also these guards here along the runway who are incredibly interesting and can probably be a much longer segment, as these guards do have a chance to throw grenades. However, the odds are incredibly low. That said, though, once you eliminate them and the new guards at the starting end of the runway spawn to try to hunt you down, they do have a potential to have a much higher chance of throwing grenades, although this isn't a guarantee, as there is a 1 in 3 chance for them not to have the option to throw grenades at all. Or if it does, for them to either keep their probability odds from before or reset it to 0. I'm not exactly certain on that, as it doesn't seem to change the probability to 0. So I am assuming that it keeps whatever value it had before. If somebody could correct me on that and can verify that information, I would very much appreciate that. That said, there is this guard here in the grenade probability labeled 08, and his description is simply an exclamation point. And I can't say that I'm not curious about that, as I could not find a 08 in the level. So I'm not sure if that guard just doesn't spawn or if that guard has a hidden mechanic. I do not know. Otherwise, I would say the only thing to note outside of that, as far as coding goes, is going to be this propeller here on the plane, which I find very interesting. Has this red and greenish coloring scheme, this very thermal colored, I guess. uh, I feel like there's a term that I am forgetting right now for that. I believe it is black in the main game, but I will honestly have to look again. Once again, as for the guards on the runway, there is a very long list of locations in which they will go to based on where you are on the runway. And while I will show a snippet here, that said, while that would certainly pad out the runtime, I don't think that would be the most entertaining thing for us to go over, especially for at least several minutes. I did, however, want to talk about changes to the slappers only rules, as because these runway guards can throw grenades, while you can't destroy the two guns at the end of the runway with grenades, you can destroy the missiles as well as the first machine gun. That does open up some issues, as while the bond guards do have a very high chance of throwing grenades, it is definitely not the highest odds overall. And assuming I were to hit the two far gunners with 2 tank shots on the way down, there is the problem with the third gunner, as I would need a very quick grenade throw to destroy that. Then move over to the missile, hopefully without accidentally getting the plane blown up along the way, as they can and will destroy it. And then it's not good enough to just get a grenade throw. I would also likely have to slap the guard, probably in the legs, so that way I don't ix them too early. So that way the grenade would be slightly delayed and blow up in the air, but it would also have to be close enough to the missile to be able to destroy it, all while I'm being shot by the other spawned guards. It will likely be a very tight situation, and may put Runway back up as one of the hardest levels to complete in this challenge, as even though the odds aren't the lowest, like with Facility, the area is much more open, and my ability to dodge will have to be at Toho levels. With that said, I'm hoping this at least made it past the 6-minute mark, but I do already have the recording done for second part of the Nintendo Theory, which I will be editing as soon as I'm done doing this, and we'll hopefully have that out shortly as well. I believe the next episode is going to be Surface 1, which might end up being another short episode. However, there is enough objects on that level that I might be pleasantly surprised as well. We will just have to see when that episode comes around. And until then, if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And certainly one last thing, since this episode was so short, I wanted to share this, which is a puzzle I had made 3 years ago. But as of right now, this puzzle remains unsolved, despite quite a few very intelligent people taking a look at it and trying to solve it themselves. It may be one of the hardest puzzles, especially in terms of Sudoku. So if you think yourself a Sudoku guru, please be my guest in trying to solve it. I will add a link for an editable copy where you can try it out for yourself, and I certainly look forward to seeing if anybody can solve it. Until the next video, I hope you have a fantastic evening. Bye-bye.